up? Hope everybody's doing well. Let me pin this real quick. Hope everybody's doing well. Sorry I'm tardy for the party here. We got lot of wildness going on, but all good stuff. Hope everybody is doing good. Just want to make sure that you guys can hear me. I still am trying to figure out all these different gadgets and doohickeys. Today we're going to be talking about Ecclesiastes chapter 4 and chapter 3, chapter 4 and chapter 5, which is really interesting. Really excited to get into. Got me thinking a lot about dreams and definitely how we deal with the poor. So we're going to be going through Ecclesiastes chapter 4 and 5 today, while I'm just killing time as Instagram and Facebook lets everybody know we're live. I did want to run something by you guys. Okay, I wanted to run something by you. Let me know your thoughts here. Hold on a second. Let me pull this out. I want to do an additional thing with, it's not a program, but I want to do an additional disruptive faith thing. All right, I haven't figured this out. This is all brand new. I don't know what to call it. All right, but I want to do like, here's my rough title. This is not a title, but it'll at least it'll allow me to be able to communicate it. I want to do like a disruptive faith X-Files. And what I mean by that is typically we always say we try to have honest and necessary conversations that you might not be having at your local Sunday morning service. And so I think the conversations that we have are challenging and, we try to have conversations that are important, but may not be typically being had. The Disruptive Faith X-Files. And this may not be for everybody, Jada. This may not even be for everyone in the disruptive faith community. I just think it's good to at least have a space where people can, this is going to be a dangerous word, it's going to get me yelled at, speculate. Meaning like, there are a lot of things about, just about God that I think sometimes as Christians, we don't talk about because it makes us uncomfortable, and we don't want to appear to be either, I don't know. I think the only word I can think of is that we don't want to appear to be judged by other Christians. I know for me personally, being honest, that's my hesitancy. And maybe judge is the wrong word. I think we don't want to be misunderstood, and so I think I want to have a space for uncomfortable conversations that just allow Christians and believers to not have to come with answers like, I know this, but to be able to discuss, look at uncomfortable information, and have those. So I know I'm being vague, but I guess what would be examples like that? Evolution. A fair amount. I don't have a strong stance. Like, I'm not like, let's fight over this. But, I mean, there's a fair amount of, I think would be evidence for evolution. But how does that work with what we know about Scripture? A lot of Christians now will just be like, well, the Bible says Adam and Eve, so everything else is foolishness. And that may be true. Everything else may be foolishness. Some Christians do believe in evolution. Is there a space where we can come and discuss it without it being a life and death, you're not a Christian, you don't love Jesus matter? So, and one that would not shake your faith. So here's who these conversations would not be for. Just being honest. So if you're coming in the middle, I'm working out this thing. This is just an idea. Okay, this could be a really bad idea, but I want to have this thing where um, maybe like another thing during the week where we come together and just have like just even more uncomfortable conversations than we already have sometimes. I feel like sometimes we have uncomfortable conversations. I think this will be even more uncomfortable conversations. I'm even uncomfortable talking about having the uncomfortable conversations. But just a way, I think we have to be able to at least talk about these things. But anyway, I think who this is not for, just being honest. If everything is a life and death, not life and death, you're not saved if you don't believe the same thing I believe, or yeah, if it is going to be a trigger for you, for people to question these things, to talk about the Book of Enoch, to talk about one God, Elohim above other gods, all types of uncomfortable conversations that Christians are having, that people who love God are having intellectual conversations about these things, but I don't think they're at the forefront because they become so, what is the word I'm looking for? They become so aggressive, so uncomfortable to have. So I don't know. I'm still working through that. Disrupt Faith X-Files. I don't know. I want to have, again, a space where we can continue to have uncomfortable conversations. And I think God will be in the midst of those uncomfortable conversations. So if any of that makes sense, that's what I'm thinking about. Let me know. Let me know if you guys will be interested in that, and maybe some other things that I'm not even thinking about that, maybe you would want to discuss. I think, we live in a time where people are a lot more spiritual. Like nobody wants to be a Christian anymore. Everybody's spiritual, and everybody has their own kind of convenient beliefs. And then sometimes you may be out in the world, you may run up against something where somebody just said something wild that you never heard before, and then you go research it, and you see that there's a tiny bit of truth to it, and then your whole world is shattered because you feel like, man, I thought this could never be. And so I want to be able to have a space where believers can come and kind of have those conversations ahead of time where, this is not the first, it's not the first time you're hearing about it. So anyway, that is what I would like to do. Let me know you guys' thoughts if you would be interested in that. If you're here with us today, if you don't mind, hit that like button. It just helps let people know we're live. And also let me know where you are joining us from. And then we can get started in Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Let's go after it. Let me get this thing set up here. All right. Come on, somebody. Ecclesiastes chapter 4. How can I make this bigger? Give me 1 second. I got glasses, but boom, that's what I need right there. All right, hold on. Boom. All right, we're gonna be dealing with Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Last week we were at Ecclesiastes chapter 3, which had a lot to do with time and timing. And sorry, give me 1 second. There we go. A lot to do with time and timing. And today we are going to be dealing with, today we're going to be dealing with and looking at some interesting things in Ecclesiastes chapter 4 and 5. We're going to do both because 3 is, or chapter 4 is kind of short. So let's read through this and we can go ahead and get to it. Simply D, what up? Simply D says, Good evening from Lynchburg. I feel that's a good idea and need discussions that will prompt growth. I hope so. It may also be the discussions that get me kicked off of YouTube, Christian YouTube. All right, let me scroll back up here. All right, here we go. All right, so yeah, let's get to it. We're going to start at verse 1. Ecclesiastes, oh, this is 4. Sorry, hold on 1 second. Bada bing, bada boom. All right, Ecclesiastes 3, starting at verse 1. No. Y'all got to keep me in prayer, bro. We are at 4. We're doing 4 and 5. All right. Ecclesiastes chapter 1 says, I looked again and saw all the oppression that occurs under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed. No one comforts them. Those who oppress them are powerful. No one can comfort them. All right, there we go. So I deem the dead who have already died more fortunate than the living who are still alive. Better off than both of them is the one who has not yet been born and has not seen the evil deeds that are done under the sun. So Solomon, just discussing. There's an interesting. There's something interesting here that you see in Ecclesiastes and you see it in Proverbs, and that is there's like 3 dynamics I think of people, and that is the oppressed, the poor, and everyone else. And so there's always like this group who are the oppressors, the poor who are oppressed, and then there is the everyone else. So even in this one, where it just says that, let me see if I can scroll back up here. I saw the tears of the oppressed, and no one comforts them, and those who oppress them are powerful, and no one comforts them. So you got the oppressed, the ones who are oppressing them, and then that everyone else thing. And it would seem like the obligation would be on the everyone else to stand up for those who are oppressed, those who are poor. Because obviously it would not be the oppressor that would do that. I think the other thing that is interesting, there's this dynamic in Ecclesiastes, but even more so in Proverbs, where the poor or the needy are kind of depicted in 2 different ways. One is oppressed and one is lazy. So it's like you have, when he mentions the poor, sometimes he will mention them as being oppressed, and then sometimes as lazy. And I don't think he's calling the poor both of those things. I think he's saying or insinuating that both of those things can lead to people being poor. So you have people who are poor because of their lack of effort, and then you have people who are poor, who have been oppressed and taken advantage of. And I know we live in a time where even that word oppressed comes with such strong feelings, and that we live kind of in a society that typically defines people by one, or defines the disenfranchised by one. Either they are all oppressed, all disenfranchised are oppressed, or all disenfranchised are poor, lazy, just need to get a job. So it's just an interesting dynamic, and it is a reminder to me even to be more, I guess, slow to even judge. You know what I mean? Like I said, I think a lot of people not a lot of people, but there are a fair amount of people all disenfranchised people are disenfranchised because they have been oppressed. And then there's a fair amount of people like, no, there is no oppression. This is the greatest place on earth. If you are disenfranchised, it is because XYZ, you're lazy, blah, blah, blah. So I think both can exist. And I think there is a responsibility on the everyone else to take up for and defend those who are on that oppressed side and encourage and push those who are on the lazy side or the fool side as much as we can. So all right, but let's continue on. Yeah. Oh, and then he gets kind of dark. He says, "Better off." Both of them is the one who's not yet been born and has not seen the evil deeds that are done under the sun. I also realize that all of the toil and skillful work that is done is envy because one man is envy between one man and another. This also is vanity and chase the wind. So, which is interesting. I Solomon says that he thinks that all of the skillful work that is done, if you think of anyone who is good at something, typically is because of competitiveness between individuals trying to keep up and be better than everyone else. I definitely think that's the case a fair amount of the time. I wonder how many times that is the case, but that is an interesting and I think a wise observation. Shout out, hence Solomon, wisest man in the world. Chasing the wind, going down to 5. He said, the fool refuses to work with his hands. Again, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. So he has nothing to eat except his own skin. Better a handful of peace than 2 fistfuls of toil and chasing the wind. It's interesting. I think a lot of times when we look at this one, we view it as 2 separate scriptures. Like he's making 2 separate points, but I wonder, he says, the fool refuses to work with his hands, so he has nothing to eat except his own skin. Better a handful of peace than 2 fistfuls of toil and chasing the wind. It's interesting because toil is not necessarily, it's not an evil thing. So I know a lot of times maybe we'll say, I'll prefer a handful of peace versus 2 fistfuls of toils and chasing the wind, but that's basically effort. That's basically work. I mean, everything we do is toil. Solomon encourages us to find a toil or work that we enjoy. And he says that everything is chasing the wind. So I don't think that this 2 fistful of toils necessarily represents something that is negative. I want to spend some more time digesting that. Yeah. I'm just thinking like the fool refuses to work with his hands, so he has nothing to eat except his own skin. Obviously not good. But a handful of peace than 2 fistfuls with toil and chasing the wind. Interesting scripture. Let me know what you guys think about that. We can come back and discuss that. Verse 7, he said, I turned again and saw another vanity under the sun. Sometimes a man is alone with no companion. He also has neither son nor brother, yet is no end to all his toil, and his eyes is not satisfied with wealth. He laments For whom am I toiling or depriving myself of pleasure? This also is vanity. It is an unhappy business. Um, and then he goes on to say, which this part is very popular, it's always mentioned a lot in weddings. Two are better than one, for they enjoy a better reward for their toil. For if one falls, his companion may help him up. But pity the one who falls, and there is no one to help him. Also, if two lie together, they can keep each other warm. But how can one person be warm? Although an assailant may overcome one person, two may withstand him. A threefold cord is not easily broken. And, that has been quoted at weddings all across the world. I think I might have even had that on my wedding. It's interesting because I'm not sure where the origin of us tying this to wedding and then, the threefold cord, the third person supposed to be God, which I think is great. But I think also just looking at it in the context here, it shows the importance of companionship. And you know, I wonder, I think maybe, I wonder if we take companionship, a lot of times we talk about community, we talk about, building a Christian community and being in a community of Christians. I know for me, I definitely take companionship for, uh, for granted. I think I have a great, fantastic group of friends. Like, I feel like I got like the super friends, like the Avengers. And so, because of that, I'm not closed off to new people. I'm just disinterested, which sounds bad, and that's something that I need to work on because I think having this, even he says even here, a threefold cord is not easily broken. I think it goes back to this thing of unity. Like, right now we live in a culture where it's like my circle's so small, it's a dot, and all this other stuff that sounds cool. But I wonder what it would be like if we invested more time in our tribe, more time in building a stronger tribe, building a stronger community, intentionally expanding that community, not just for our own benefits. Again, it's this thing where it's like, you only people that can help you be better. Well, what about the people that you can help? It may be people in your tribe that you can add to your tribe um, that maybe you can help build them up. And so I just think us being more intentional in building a community would be a good thing. This is something that it challenges me to do as well. Because like I said, I just be chilling. Simply D says, notes from my Bible states in 5 and 6, the fool refers to one person being lazy, hurting people. They depend on one person being lazy, hurting people. They depend on oh my gosh, the thing went away. One person is driven by envy, trying to stay with everyone, which I think a lot of us do more than we would admit, trying to keep up with the Joneses, trying to make sure that we're not behind, comparing ourselves to what is going on, and maybe this is way left, but even when we think about like finances and poor, not everywhere in America, but a fair, depending on where you are in America, poor is relative. But if, what we have, other countries would be like, man, I would love to just have that. And I think there is this thing that is in us that is dependent upon and is constantly comparing ourselves where we are with everyone that is in our, not necessarily our friendship community, but our visible community. So yeah, I think that's interesting. One person is referred to one person being lazy, hurting. That's interesting. A fool refers to, sorry, just reading this comment again. Fool refers to a person being lazy and hurting the people that they depend on. A fool is used a lot in is used a lot in sorry Hebrews and not Hebrews. Let's do this. A fool is used a lot in Ecclesiastes and Proverbs. I actually want to do a word study on fool. I would encourage you guys to do that. I'm curious, like, again, we say fool now, and it may mean one thing to us, but I'm curious what the writers meant when, they were warning us about being a fool. All right. Let me go. Let me keep going here. Two are better than one. Say that. Yeah. So I think intentionally building our community. I'm not sure how this got attached to weddings, but that's like the thing. You, your spouse, and then God is the three core, which I think is true and great. But I think another thing for us to think about is how can we intentionally strengthen that community that we have, strengthen our tribe. Continuing on to 13, because we also going to do chapter 4 as well. A poor but wise youth is better than an old but foolish king who no longer knows how to receive advice. For he came out of the prison house to reign, since he was born poor in his kingdom. I saw all the living who move about under the sun with the youth, the second who will stand in his place. There is no end to all the people, to all who are before him. Yet the later generations will not rejoice in him, for there is also vanity and chasing wind. That the bottom part to me seems like he's recounting an actual story or someone that he saw. But it's interesting. A poor but wise youth is better than an old but foolish king who no longer knows how to receive advice. If I'm not mistaken, that word advice really means like to be warned of something. And I think we've seen that a lot of times in leadership and just sometimes in people in general where I don't know if it's age specific, but you get to a certain amount of authority or a lack of accountability that no one could tell you anything. I think this even happened with the Pharisees. These are people who were supposed to know God, but these were the people who, when John the Baptist came to warn them, rejected them. These are people who ignored John the Baptist. This is supposed to be what they were waiting for, but I do think it's there is this part where you can get to when you have authority. If you don't have a real community, if you don't have real friends, then I think you can get to a part where like nobody can warn you, nobody can tell you anything. Because going back to even the envy part, everyone is just trying to what is the word, like save face, like keep up with that community. So there's no true accountability. No one will say, pull a king or a person to the side in leadership and say, hey, listen, XYZ. So I think it's important for whether you're in leadership or not to have that core group of believers and friends that can always pull you to the side and let you know when you're tripping. All right, sorry, let me go here. All right, we are at, moving on to Ecclesiastes chapter 4. No, this is 4. There we go. Sorry, y'all. All right, Ecclesiastes chapter 5. We'll continue on down this. It says, guard your steps. This is we'll get to it. Guard your steps when you go into the house of God. Draw near to listen rather than to offer a sacrifice of fools, for they do not know that they are doing evil. I think, and you guys can let me know what you think, like, God is definitely our Father. he desires a real relationship with us, a real relationship with us. There is though this casualness with God that I feel like might border on disrespectful. Maybe disrespectful is a strong word, but think about it like this. I feel like most people tend to take the people who are closest to them for granted. Maybe your spouse, maybe your parents, maybe your friend. It's the ones that are closest to us that we tend to take for granted, or that we even maybe tend to not always appreciate the way that we should because we've developed such a casual relationship with them. And I wonder sometimes in our ability to have access with God and our closeness with God, is there this casualness with Him that I'm still trying to work through, because this is still the God of the universe. He is still holy, and and He is still, He's still God. And I don't think that we should. I don't think He desires that we have to walk on eggshells around Him or be uncomfortable. But I think it is important for us to remember He is God. And so that was brought to my mind here where He says, guard your steps in the house of God. Draw near to Him. Draw near rather to listen than to offer the sacrifice of fools, for they do not know that they are doing evil. Do not be rash with your mouth, and do not let your heart be quick to utter a word before God. For God is in heaven, and you are on earth. Therefore, let your words be few. And there is this, for me, it's a reminder of we get up in the morning and it's like we have this long prayer request list, which is fine, of all the things that we want. And, God, can I get this? Can I get this? And I wonder how many times we are pausing and we're like, God, what is it that you are saying? What is it that you want to do? What is it that you are saying to me today? And I just think, we live in a world of extremes, and sometimes we tend to go on one extreme where it's like, I think about it all the time, like grace. Sometimes people were, at one point in time, people were very harsh. They only talk about the wrath of God. Hell, you're going to burn in hell. And then there was this movement to talk about grace. We got to have grace, which is, great. But then it's like you start on one end of the spectrum and then you go all the way to the other end. And it's like, where's that balance? Like, again, God is holy, but He is deserving of reference. This is still the God of the universe. So I am, with all the things that are on my mind that I do want to share and express, I still want to know, what is it that He wants to say? What is it that He is doing? And so for me personally, I'm trying to work out this balance of relationship and reference. If that makes sense. Going down here, this is interesting to me. And so starting then in verse 2, it says, for God is in heaven and you are on earth, let your words be few. Then it says, for a dream comes with many cares. That word cares literally means task. And the voice of a fool with many words. And so what stood out to me about this, for a dream comes with many cares. Every time that I can think of in Scripture where they are referring to about dreams, it's always God speaking to someone. Um, in ancient world, I can't speak for everyone, but each culture, I don't know if there is what up. I don't know if there is a culture that did not believe that dreams were God speaking to you. And so even now, today, scientists don't know why we dream. They have speculations. Some of the speculations are that your mind is trying to rehearse things and get you ready for um, the day, or the day, which doesn't really make sense. They just can't explain why we dream. That is a thing that scientists have not been able to figure out. And so this just reminded me, and that we need to pay more attention to our dreams. Like, I know for me, like, sometimes I'll just dream stuff and be like, oh wow, that was crazy. But like, no, like, um, something I started doing is when I don't do it with everything, but now I might actually do it with everything. I just, like, if I have a dream, you always think you're gonna remember it, and then what happens? You never freaking remember the dream. So now what I do is when I wake up in the morning, I'll do like a voice note of the dream, and then either go back to sleep, go on my day, and sure enough, I'll always forget the dream. Um, but it's like, yo, what if? And some dreams are wild, but what if that dream is God speaking to you? Again, I'm trying to be gracious. I'm not God. I don't know everything, but every known culture, ancient culture, saw dreams as this kind of line where this physical world interacts with the spiritual world, where either God was speaking to you or the devil, but it's like this type of when you're sleeping and when you're in the dream state, this type of interaction between the spiritual and physical world. I know for me, and this is gonna sound bad, but it's the dream I had. I know for me, I had a dream. First two times I did not notice it, but I had it a third time, and then that's when I knew, okay, this is God. I had a dream about my youngest son. My youngest son, um, yeah, I kept having this dream, the same exact dream about my youngest son. Now this is gonna sound bad, by the way, but this is what I did in my dream, not not in real life. I was disciplining my youngest son. I think I was giving him like a spanking or something. Well, no, I was giving him a spanking. And he was not crying. And so I was like spanking him, and he wasn't crying. And so I was trying to turn it up. Cause in my dream, I was trying to get him to feel regret for whatever he did. So I was trying to spank him until I felt like he felt regret. And I remember in my dream feeling like this kind of feels borderline abusive. Again, this is my dream, not reality. And so first time I ignored, I thought that was strange. Second time I ignored, I thought it was strange. And then third time, I was like, all right. And what I got from the dream and later saw even in discussing with him is that with my son, I have to be gentle, not in the way that I discipline him. I'm not even talking about physically, because we used to get beat. So now I'm more what's the word? I'm like, no, I'm gonna stay. Try not to do spankings. But even I try not to be harsh in my discipline with him because I didn't realize how my harsh discipline, not even, again, not physically, just even my presence. Like I'm a big guy. I don't realize that. But I didn't realize how it affected him. And until one day my wife was like, what did he tell my wife? He said, this is, again, this is going dark, but this is going to come back to this. he said, and he's like 7. He's like, I annoy you guys. And she was like, what? And basically what he had picked up on is, you know how sometimes your kids kind of do stuff to you. It's like, bro, why are you doing that? He kind of picks up on the tone of how we say things, and that was affecting how he was viewing himself. So anyway, I said all that to say, those dreams with that changed the way I begin to interact, even conversationally with my son when I am correcting him. And so I think dreams can be this opportunity, if we pay attention to it, that may be speaking to you about something, Aaron, that you are not aware of. I know that's a dark, awkward, weird way, but I think about this scripture in verse 3 where it says, for a dream comes with many cares. Again, that word cares is task. And if a dream is an opportunity for God to speak to you, typically that would incur some type of instructions. And so it's like you have these tasks, these obligations, and it says a fool's voice, the voice of a fool comes with many words. When you make a vow to God, do not delay in fulfilling it, for he takes no pleasure in fools. Fulfill what you vow. Fulfill what you vow. It is better that you not vow than that you vow and not fulfill it. Do not let your mouth lead your flesh into sin. Do not tell the messenger it was a mistake. Why anger God with your words so that he destroys the works of your hand? And this is that thing, like, again, God is holy, God is sovereign. I think we have to have discussions and maybe figure out what is the balance of reverence and relationship. Because I think, again, there might be a certain casualness with God. Not that we have to go on the other extreme, that we just might have to be aware of that at the end of the day, we're still dealing with the holy God of the universe. And this verse 7 is weird to me, again, because dreams seem to be where God communicates with people throughout all of Scripture. And here he says, with many dreams come vanities and numerous words. Therefore, fear God. What the freak? I don't know. And this is one of the reasons why Ecclesiastes is my favorite book. And I try to go through it like this a couple of times because there's such a mystery in the wisdom. Like, I know he knows what he's talking about, but some things, I just don't know. And each time, different things make more sense. And maybe it's just life. But anyway, 8, it says, do not be surprised if you see the poor being oppressed with violence, and do not see justice and righteousness in the province. For one official is watched over by a higher official, and there are even higher officials over them. The produce of the land is exploited by everyone. Even the king profits from the field of the poor. Yeah, and it's interesting because back in ancient Hebrew times, they used to have this process. It's in Scripture called gleaning, and what it basically is when they were reaping the harvest or getting food, like anything that kind of like fail or that they miss, God told them to leave for the poor, and so the poor would come and they would kind of pick up the scraps from the harvest. They told them not to get it from the not to kind of harvest from the corners, and that would leave some for the poor. And so you think about like the fact that, which I think we see all in life, that like an official can be corrupt, and above that corrupt official is another corrupt official, and then you have the poor who are already getting the scraps, who are already getting leftover, but then the king or the corrupt ones have found a way to benefit even from that, even from the leftovers, even from the scraps that the poor are getting. And Solomon doesn't really leave us with a solution, just an observation. Just, hey, it bees like that. And so, I don't know, it's just, it definitely got me thinking of my obligation to the poor. Like, I know everything is so, and the poor and the disenfranchised, I know everything is so polarizing now. It's like, you know, hard to discuss, but I do think we as believers and just people in general have an obligation to stand up for the disenfranchised. And again, for those who are disenfranchised, I think we have an obligation to stand up and speak on their behalf. And for those who are fools, I do think we have an obligation at least to encourage them not to be fools and encourage them in wisdom in whatever way we can, and kind of take each situation, case by case. Don't assume that everyone is disenfranchised, and definitely don't assume that everyone is a fool. Continue on, getting ready to. And here he says, whoever loves money is not satisfied with money. Whoever loves wealth is not satisfied with profit. This also is vanity. When prosperity increases, then those who consume it increases. Come on, somebody. So its owner gains nothing except to see his wealth before it is spent. The sleep of the labor is pleasant, whether he eats little or eats much. But the wealth of the rich man does not allow him to rest. Some things are self-explanatory and still sad. I know, again, one of the things that this book encourages me to do is to find balance. It's to find balance that, wealth is not evil. Being poor is not righteous. There is this balance in almost everything where it's like, yeah, it's the wealth of the rich man does not allow him to rest. I think we see that all the time. I think we see that in culture. I think you don't even necessarily have to be wealthy or rich to see that. A lot of times, the moment you get something that you really, really care about, the next things become a concern for losing it, and that causes a lack of rest, a lack of peace. And so, again, what he will encourage us at the end, and has encouraged us throughout the whole scripture, is to find work and toil that you can enjoy, to find work that you can enjoy, and to find moments of peace and enjoyment and relaxation, and embrace those. So find work that you can enjoy and take and use every opportunity for peace and enjoyment, even outside of your toil, that you can find. I don't know, like, I guess a practical one would be like, vacations, time with family, these things that we may take for granted. These Ecclesiastes encourages and reminds us these are a gift from God. And so, continuing on here, this is a grievous evil which I have seen under the sun, wealth hoarded by its owners to his harm. The wealth is lost in a bad venture. Although he is born a child, he has nothing to leave him. Just as he came from his mother's womb naked, so he departed, just as he came. He will take nothing with him for his toil. This is a grievous illness. Exactly as he came, he will go. What profit does he gain for all his toil? For the whim. Also, he eats the darkness all his days. He is frustrated in much sickness and resentment. Again, not much not much solution there, just pure observation that, he sees. Sometimes I see people who have wealth lose it and they have nothing to give their family, give their children. And, they die just like they came in the world with nothing. And then he says in 18, look, I have discovered what is good and what is fitting. This is a again, the book of Ecclesiastes, most people believe, and I think it would be true, is written by Solomon or someone who is speaking from a perspective of Solomon or as Solomon. And Solomon is the wisest man in the earth and is the richest man in the earth. And he decided to use those riches and that wisdom to figure out what it is that you and I should do with our time on the earth. And this is the continual conclusion that he comes to right here in 18. It often comes back to this very thing right here. Look, I have discovered what is good and fitting to eat and to drink and to enjoy all the fruit of the toil which one toils under the sun, during the number of his days that the Lord gives him. This is his lot. This indeed is a gift from God. Everyone to whom God gives wealth and possessions, he also empowers them to enjoy it, to accept his lot, to rejoice in the fruit of his toil. This is, we might as well just read this last one here. For he does not remember the brief days of his life, for God keeps his heart preoccupied with the enjoyment of life. All right, what is interesting to me about that is like when he says this is his lot in life, I think about, if you think about like a 4x4 square or like an actual like construction lot. And it's like this space is your space that God has given you to do. He has a purpose in his plan, and this is all all trying to find the balance of it. But there is this space that you have to be able to enjoy your life, to be able to enjoy the time with your family, to be able to build and grow. If again, if we've been dark, we live in a time where it just is. I don't know if it's COVID that just was very destabilizing, but I know for me sometimes when I am doing things like we're trying to do stuff around the house, sometimes I'm like, man, why am I doing this when the world is about to come to an end? And that's a very dark thought, but I'm like, sometimes it feels like, is investing in enjoyment worth it? Because who knows if I'll even be able to enjoy it. But I think like this all is an encouragement to me, is that again, when we look at, when he talks about the poor a lot of times, or the poor, either it's kind of depicted in two ways: one, disenfranchised, or one, lazy. And so there is this work that we have to do. We do have to work. We spend all our days toiling. This is what Ecclesiastes says over and over again. But we should be able to, and again, this is something that I need to work on, take moments to enjoy it. You know what I mean? For me, it seems like a noble thing, but it's really not. Like everything has to have some deep purpose. Like I was thinking today, of our hobbies, and so like I was thinking about what my hobbies are, and for me, my hobbies ended up becoming my work. Like I love video production and different things like that, and so that ended up becoming my hobby. Ended up becoming my job, which is a blessing, but you know, other than that, it kind of leaves me hobbyless. So I was thinking of like, man, I should develop or embrace some type of hobby. But then my first thought was, nah, but what would that accomplish? And it's like everything doesn't have to fall into this deep thing. Some things in life are just made and built for you to enjoy. So I think it is this kind of this dual mentality that we have to have, and that I definitely have to work on, is that we need to work hard. We need to be faithful. We need to be diligent. We need to be about God's business. We need to be about trying to understand what does it mean to love God with all our heart and our soul, and love our neighbor as ourselves. We need to be thinking about what does it mean to fight for the oppressed, to fight for the poor. What does it mean to work and to build the kingdom of God, to walk in humility and patience, and all these things that as believers are on our mind that we're thinking about. But also in that, we need to be free of conviction when it comes to finding moments of life that are about nothing but enjoyment. And I know for me, that is different. It is difficult, and I think it may be difficult for you. It may be difficult for other believers to like be able to just sit and enjoy stuff. But again, I think that lot in life example. It's like you have this lot or this, I don't want to call it a plot in land, but you have this space in life that you can do. I don't want to say do what you want, because I do believe we have a purpose and direction for God, but there is room for you to establish like this is just for enjoyment. But if you fill the whole thing up with toil, there's a lack of wisdom in that. If you fill the whole thing up with enjoyment, there is a lack of wisdom in that. And so one of the things that I think we'll see over and over again in Ecclesiastes is that balance of filling that lot up with toil that you enjoy, and also embracing the moments of enjoyment as gifts from God. And so it's just something to think about. Next week we will dive into Ecclesiastes chapter 3. I may Ecclesiastes chapter 3. I don't know why chapter 3 is like embedded in my brain. Next week we'll dive into Ecclesiastes chapter 6. I may do 6 and 7, because Ecclesiastes is kind of tricky, because some parts of Ecclesiastes are just merely observations. I'm not going to say it's not a lot that we could kind of apply. Some things in Ecclesiastes are extremely profound and needed. I think it all is, but some things are extremely profound, needed, and applicable. But then some things in Ecclesiastes are just like, oh wow, that was really dark, and then just moving on to the next thing. So I'm thinking about maybe doing 2 chapters to kind of. I don't want to skip over stuff, because I think that it has some very powerful stuff, but it might help when we get to those kind of chapters that are just, he's just stating his observations. So that's it. Next week we will do Ecclesiastes chapter 6 and maybe chapter 7. Simply says the church doesn't teach on enjoyment if it doesn't have to do with anything, Christian related. Guilt. That is, I wonder if that's where it comes from. This thing of like enjoyment is. I think we see enjoyment as vanity, and we don't see it as a gift. And this is one of the things that Ecclesiastes encourages us. It encourages us to look at enjoyment as a gift. So I completely agree. This week on the podcast, we're going to be talking about manifesting. Come on, somebody. And like this idea of manifesting, and you may hear people talking about, you block your blessing. And so I want to talk about that, like manifesting, blocking. Can you block your blessing? is manifesting biblical. Where does it come from? Is it bad or good? Those things we'll be discussing this week on the podcast at 9 o'clock. So 9 o'clock Thursday night down on the podcast. Elliot, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Yeah, we'll be talking about that this week on the podcast. Also, I got figured out this Disruptive Faith X-Files thing. I got to figure out what to call it. And what will be the best way to do it. But it's, again, it's just basically having nuanced, speculative conversations about Christianity, where the weight of the world does not have to be on you having the right answers. Again, it may not be for everyone, and that's fine, but I do want to at least have a space for those that it's for. What we may do is like a little test on the podcast, test the waters, and then see how that goes. But I do think it should be a space where people can talk. And then the other thing is, I want to do like a Disruptive Faith town hall. All right. I'm very curious. I use this software to like work on videos. And one of the things that I appreciate about the software is whatever feedback they get, you know, they implement it in the feedback. It's like they're very connected to the people that use their software. It's actually DaVinci Resolve. So shout out to DaVinci Resolve. And so it's like you give them feedback, they kind of work on it, and then later it's in the update. And so that got me thinking, like, I really want this community to really help build up believers and to really challenge us to think differently about things that maybe we even thought were certain. And not just for the sake of doing it, but for the sake of growth. You know, each year kind of has a theme that we deal with. Last year, we were dealing with the theme of where do we grow from here? So I think that was 2021. We had just been through 2020, which was, you know, the birth of COVID, a very difficult year for a lot of people. And so the theme of everything that we kind of talked about last year was, where do we grow from here? Where do we grow from the difficulties that we have faced in life, or will we face in life? What things will lead us to growth? This year has been more of a truth is greater than tradition. A lot of the things that we're looking at this year is looking at what are the things that we believe and that we operate on just based on tradition, but are not necessarily the truth, and where do these things come in conflict that maybe we could think differently about, learn, and grow. And so what next year will be, you know, I don't know, but I would love to hear from you guys. And why I say I want to do a town hall in is like, what would you like us to see us do more of? Even what would you like to see us do less of? What do you think that we do well? Or what do you find to be the most helpful? And then what do you find to be the least helpful? And so just being able to get that that feedback so that we can be even, we can be even more helpful. So that is the goal. I still have to work that out and see what that would be like. You know, I think, and again, this is just how my mind works. Like, we have 1,600 people who are currently subscribed to this channel. I know, like, the thing is like, no, you should try to get 1 million. You got 1,600, try to get 3,000, try to get 2,000. I'm curious in how can we affect the lives? How can we reach those 1,600? You know what I mean? Like, and so how, you know, so I want to know, like, how can we, I mean, it sounds very churchy, but I do mean it. Like, how can we better serve? How can we what have you found to be very helpful in the content? What you'd like to see us do more of? Maybe what is not helpful, and what can we do less of, and then kind of get a consensus. Every single thing may not be, XYZ, but at least if we can get a consensus of these things tend to be helpful, these things tend not to be helpful, I think that would be helpful. So that is a few things that are coming down the pipe. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but I really appreciate you guys. Thank you for coming through. Like I said, next week we'll be doing Ecclesiastes. Depending on how long it is, I have to go look again. We'll do 6 and 7. And then this week, Thursday, 9 o'clock, we'll be talking about manifesting, blocking your blessing. Do these things really exist? Is there some way we can see them in Scripture where they happen? Maybe, but those are things, those are discussions that we will be talking about. All right, without any further ado, love you guys. Appreciate you guys. If there's anything that you would like us to discuss, or you have some ideas for what we can discuss on that Disrupt the Faith X-Files, let me know, and you can put it in the comment section, and we'll continue to keep that going. All right, I just want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. All right, love, appreciate you guys. Without any further ado, peace and blessings. All right.